engagement. Over 100 of you have registered for this seminar on negotiation. I'll be with you for about 40 to 45 minutes, taking you through some of our thoughts on negotiation, structured around our 4 pillars. So it is an interactive session. There will be dilemmas for you to think about, but due to the numbers of people, I won't be able to give interactive feedback. We have an administrator on hand with any technical problems, but you can sit back, you can relax, and I hope you find it interesting. I will now start the presentation. First of all, let's go through some housekeeping. We'll then look at instructions, both ArcBlue and myself, a definition of negotiation to make sure we all have the same understanding. It doesn't always translate into some languages, so that'll be interesting to discuss. Our house of negotiation. Our house is made up of 4 pillars, which we believe are important to negotiations, and we'll talk about each pillar, which represents an interesting aspect, one after each other. Then look at some keys to success, and finish with some further steps that you may wish to take. In terms of housekeeping, if you can try and remove any distractions, that would be helpful. We have got some notes for you to take. You can replay this seminar. Again, the link will still work. And we have some dilemmas for you to continue to consider. For those of you who are sitting in small groups listening to this, I suggest you discuss the dilemmas as we give you a little bit of time to answer before we give our ideal responses. You may wish to think about using headphones, particularly if you're in a busy office. If you have any technical problems, we have an administrator on hand on the 27th of February when this goes live. seminar.administrator@arcblueglobal.com. And you can also use that email address if you would like to contact us about potential further opportunities where we could help you. So who is ArcBlue? Established in 1978, very much focused on procurement, sales, leadership and general management. We deliver training and consultancy across 5 continents. We are, by definition, most of us or functional practitioners rather than trainers. This enables us to bring real-life experience into negotiations, and we have well-established relationships with professional institutes. Our negotiation work is split into 3 areas: personal development, support and advisory coaching, and online tools, e-learning, templates, and so on. And more details will be provided at the end of the seminar. We have a fairly global reach with offices in North America, in the UK, South Africa, Dubai, Japan, and Melbourne, and consultants based in many more locations than that, obviously. Apologies, Farouk, I forgot to mention the office in Turkey. So we have an office in Turkey also. So who am I? You can see that's an old photo, but I happen to like it. It is the same person as me, I promise. It was taken by a professional on a very good day. The lighting must have been excellent. I've worked with ArcBlue since 2011. I run my own business. I worked in pensions, worked in procurement for a short while. I worked in sales. I had a number of careers. For me, negotiation is about the people interaction, and that will certainly come through in today's presentation. 2017, Deloitte had produced a report which really is at the core of what we're about in terms of upskilling procurement.
We are passionate about procurement and particularly negotiation training, which is why we've introduced these free monthly series. So thank you very much for registering, and I hope you find it interesting. We have a number of exclusives for you as a thank you, and we'll talk about those at the end of the seminar in relation to further face-to-face training, offers on our procurement hub. But as I'm not here necessarily to sell to you, it's an opportunity for us to reach out to new people. I'll talk about it briefly again at the end of the seminar. So what is negotiation? It means different things to different people. So this definition will be interesting to see whether you agree. For us, fundamentally, it's a process. There needs to be some active thinking, some structure, some planning around negotiation. Otherwise, it's merely a discussion. What makes it a negotiation is the process. There should be a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we'll cover that shortly. So it's a process. It involves two or more parties. If you are the sort of person who negotiates with yourself, then this is not a course that's going to help you very much. Good luck with that. I've been there myself at times, but we're going to focus on negotiations between two or more parties. The fact that those two parties, they're at different positions, so for us, negotiation is about movement. It's the process by which two or more parties move from their initially different positions to a point where a conclusion may be reached. And it's that movement with it which is critical to us. So in negotiation, at its fundamental level, is a process of movement. And everything we talk about today, the 4 pillars of our house, and everything we talk about with you today will be about getting that movement. So here is our house of negotiation. It is supported, as you can see, by 4 pillars. First of those pillars is the people aspects. It is a people activity, a people-based activity negotiation. We'll then look at persuasion. That is your key to getting the movement. It's not the only way to get movement, but it is the key, a big part of that movement strategy. We'll talk about a process. We've said already that it's a process of movement. So we'll talk about a process and recommend a process for you to follow. And then we'll look at some ploys. We've used the word ploys for 2 reasons. It's effectively negotiation tactics, but ploys is a wider concept than tactics and includes tricks of the trade, little techniques that can help. The other reason we've used the word ploys is because those of you who are quick thinkers, it begins with a P. We have a foundation to our house of negotiation, and that is power. Power has a massive influence on a negotiation, the balance of power between the parties. So I'm going to take a little detour now and talk about power. There are 2 types of power that exist, the first of which is situational power, about perhaps the volumes that are at stake, the sole supplier status, whether there's a patent involved, whether a commitment's already been made, whether there's a personal connection between the 2 organizations or between the 2 people negotiating. All of those will have an impact on the power balance between the 2 parties. And it's critical to understand that balance and who has the power. The other type of power is personal power, how knowledgeable the person is, how senior they are maybe in the organization, how well prepared they are, and maybe they're even their personal presence. And all of those will have an impact on the personal power that you bring to a negotiation. Some of what we talk about today will help you increase your personal power. The situational power is much more of a strategic decision to make. What I would say before we leave power is that it's not actual power that has the impact in a negotiation, it's the perception of power. So if you feel that you're in a negotiation and you have no power, just ask yourself, take a few seconds and say, well, have I genuinely got no power, or is it possible that the other party thinks that they have no power and the situation is reversed? And it'll be the perception of the other party that will have an importance in the negotiation. So, back to our house of negotiation. Let's look at this people aspect. As I said, we're going to go through a number of dilemmas, and here's your first. You're buying a new motor car for cash. You've set your mind on one particular model and have obtained prices from 3 garages. The first garage or dealership, Garage A, is offering this car at £7,100. Garage B is offering the same car at £7,300. Garage C has got the car on sale for £7,295. What I'd like you to do, and I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to do this, is to write down your objective. What's your target price for each of these negotiations with each of these garages? I'm looking for 3 actual amounts. The various features of the car are exactly the same. So 20 seconds, write down 3 numbers for me, and we will then compare. Okay, there's your 20 seconds. Let's have a look, see what we think. Now, some of you will have put down around about 6,500. Some of you may have put down 7,100. Some of you will have put around figures around the 5,000 mark. I've even met people on this exercise putting figures at 3,500, particularly optimistic people. We're not really interested, and apologies for that, in the actual values or how much of a discount you think is possible. You know, somewhere between 10 and 20% may be realistic, but we're not interested in that per se. What we're interested in is whether you've got the same number for each of your 3 garages. For us, the car is the same. You should be putting a value on the car, not on whether or not the garage has got nice coffee or comfortable seats for you to sit in while you wait. The prices that you're being offered is just conditioning. It's about setting the scene and setting your expectations of what the value of this product is. And conditioning happens all the time at the buyer-seller interface. And that's particularly interesting in terms of a negotiation, in terms of how do you set expectations for a negotiation to make sure that the other party is more likely to be inclined to your way of thinking. There are other ways to prepare for a negotiation and make your job easier. One is through conditioning. The other is having a friendly disposition. So let's talk more about how can you present yourself, what behavior is appropriate for a negotiation to maximize your chances of achieving your ideal outcome. So, another task for you. What do you think makes a good negotiator? What type of behavior is appropriate in 2017 for good negotiating outcomes? I'd like you to write down 3 or 4 things that you think would be helpful. Happy for you to think about a famous person, a colleague perhaps, your boss, yourself. What is it about them that makes them a good negotiator? That's your 20 seconds up. Let's see have a look down your list and I'll show you with ours. 2 types of attributes that we're going to focus on. The first are personal attributes. And the second list, much more professional business attributes. Let's look at what we think is important on a personal level. Is a person trustworthy? Are they interested? Are they engaging? Are they good at communicating? Have they got integrity? Are they a good listener? All of those lists are things that will make someone a better negotiator. Your other party is much more likely to move towards you if they like you than if they dislike you. And that's a fundamental truth in negotiations. In advance of the meeting, if they're sitting, got positive thoughts, and looking forward to the meeting with you, they're much more likely to be coming up with creative solutions that will help you, rather than reasons why they can't help you. Let's now look at these business skills. The degree to which you're knowledgeable, the degree to which you are creative, you have clear, well-defined objectives, that you maintain control, that you're persistent with your objectives, all of these will help your outcomes in a negotiation. And I think we'd all agree that if we were facing someone who was likable, good communicator, trustworthy, credible, interested, engaging, decisive, empathetic, sincere, has integrity, has good listening skills, self-awareness, knowledgeable, focused, clear objectives, quick thinking, testing options, creative, persistent, determined, resilient, maintaining control, and opportunistic, we would be somewhat inclined to do a lot more preparation and a lot more rehearsals ahead of that meeting. So you might say, Andy, that's all good common sense. I could have written that list myself. How can I use that information? Well, the challenge you've got is that some of us are better at the personal skills and some of us are better at the business skills that we've talked about. If you focus or are naturally good at those personal attributes, you will come across as warm. If you're not so good at them or they don't come naturally to you, you can come across as cold. If on that business list, if you're the sort of person who doesn't worry about those sort of things, oh, I get on with that person, it'll be all right, I don't need to plan for that meeting, I know them well. If you focus that, you won't come across as tough. You need to spend the time doing the preparation and the planning. That sort of easy-go-lucky person is much more likely to be giving things away that they didn't want to give away. So we naturally form into two areas, either warm and easy or tough and cold, particularly when it gets difficult. What we want you to do is to be warm and tough. This is a place where assertive behavior exists. You get value in your negotiations and gain respect from the other party. And the clear communication is much easier as everybody's staying in this warm and tough box. Absolutely where we want you to be. I hear some of you saying, aha, Andy, I have a cunning plan for this. I'm really good at the personal and the warmth, and I have a colleague who's very good at the tough and the specific, maybe a technical person. That doesn't work so much for us. Clearly we all have different skills and we're all going to be plotted differently on this chart. But it's important that you as an individual try and be warm and tough. Otherwise there's a risk of you coming out with good cop, bad cop, which is a tactics that we'll discuss later, is a bit transparent for us in 2017. So that was our people column. Let's now take a little tour into persuasion and our second dilemma for you. You've been in negotiation for a day and are approaching a settlement. Your opponent is called out of the room by a phone call, and when he comes back, he abruptly announces he's been called home and can negotiate no further. He offers you a deal if you accept a few extra terms, X, Y, and Z. Take it or leave it. These terms are not particularly tough, just a little more than you'd already agreed to. Which of these options would you choose in answer to the ultimatum? Would you ask for a 5-minute recess with your people? Would you accept the deal? Maybe pretend you didn't hear it. Ask for time to call your boss? Try to make him feel unreasonable, or decline. 20 seconds. Okay, some of you, hopefully not many of you, have done number 3, pretend you didn't hear it. I'll let you off just this once, but I expect better improvements at the next dilemmas if you did. That's certainly the one we wouldn't advocate. I quite like 1, ask for 5 minutes, and we quite like ask for time to call your boss. These would score 3, 4 out of 10 for us. Accepting the deal, very nervous about, and declining seems a bit cold. One's heading towards easy, one's heading towards cold. So for us, by far the winner in this is number 5, try to make him feel unreasonable. That is the way that it is unreasonable, and the way to convey that is the best way to do it. It's not unreasonable that he has to go home. There may be some very important issue, family illness or something which has taken him home. But it's the asking for the extra for us that's unreasonable. And telling him, making him feel unreasonable is really powerful. Emotion generally in a negotiation is a very powerful way to persuade people. So let's look at persuasion methods in more detail. We have emotion, telling people how you feel. Very powerful, mainly because it's difficult for people to disagree. There are loads of other rules around using emotion. We certainly don't want you crying in a negotiation. But fundamentally, the most powerful thing is that they can't disagree if you say you're disappointed or frustrated by the lack of progress. Logic is very powerful, particularly if it's accurate. So make sure your logic is correct. Make sure it's clear. Would be very powerful to persuade someone. Threat, particularly indirect threat. So it would be a shame if we couldn't solve this today. It would be a shame if we had to consider retendering this contract. All of those are really powerful ways to persuade. We don't want direct threats, so please no one suggest we know where you live. That is not a good threat. Won't work. It has to be a business level threat. Those are not the only ways to persuade. You could also bargain by trading different variables, perhaps exchanging payment terms for discounts, and you could compromise. Instead of maybe a 5% increase in prices, you could compromise on a 3% or a 2% increase. Remember that bargaining and compromise, by their very nature, you are moving away from your ideal scenario. So emotion, logic, and threat, for us, far preferred to bargaining and compromise. So that was a quick whistle-top tour around persuasion. Now let's look at some process issues. And your next dilemma. You're selling your boat. I didn't know you had one. You must be very successful. So you're selling your boat, and a man and his wife have made an offer. After the technical discussion and some exploration of price, it came to a closing phase when the man said something like this: "This is my final offer. This is my final offer. If you don't accept it, I will buy another in a couple of days. This is my final offer for the boat, and I will discuss the contents separately. This is my final offer. Here is my check. It's only valid for 3 days. This is my final offer. I can give you a check now. This is all I can offer. Take it or leave it." In a very hard tone. Which of these is the most final and promises least hope of further negotiation? 20 seconds. Now, experience tells me that a lot of you will have gone for option 6. This is all I can offer. Take it or leave it. And I'm suspicious that you're swayed by the very hard tone. I'm nervous about this because if the tone is new to this discussion and all the other discussions were in a different tone, then it suggests possible desperation, certainly something a bit tactical. And I would think that's something that you might want to explore before you agree a negotiation, because if they are desperate, maybe they've booked a weekend away or have guests coming to see the new boat, then it puts you in a much stronger negotiating position. Some of you will have gone for 4 or 5. These are payment terms. related, brings in a sort of deadline, which might make it add some pressure. But for us, the most final is number one. This is my final offer. Generally speaking, if it is someone's final offer, that's all they will say. They will not add words or explanations or details. As a general rule, however, we would suggest that using that phrase is not a good idea. So don't put down your final offer. Don't ask for someone for their final offer or their best offer, simply because it will narrow down the conversation and will close down your routes and your options and your creativity. So if you're trying to manage and produce a structure to negotiation, the whole idea is to keep it as creative as you can for as long as you can. And using words like final offer will not help that. So let's look in more in detail about how you're going to structure this negotiation. This is our 6 phases of a negotiation. The first, I think you'll all be happy with, prepare and plan. Preparation is the what, and plan is the how. So how is it going to happen? Then you need to open the negotiation with some conditioning statements, maybe, we discussed earlier. So thank you for coming to this cost reduction meeting, for example, is a conditioning statement you might choose to use. And it's also about building the relationship and the warmth in that part of the negotiation. Then testing, filling the gaps in your knowledge, testing your assumptions, asking good open questions. The movement phase is where you're going to be using your persuasion methods. Your conclusion phase is clearly to continue to summarize and to make sure that you've captured what's been agreed. And your review is after the negotiation, internally probably, looking at what went well, what didn't go so well, and will help you plan for the next negotiation, which is why we've shown this as a circle. So 6 phases of a negotiation: prepare and plan, open, test, move, conclude, review. Our final pillar is ploys and your final dilemma. You're in a negotiation and have presented your case well. The opposition seem impressed, but an uneasy silence has developed as they look at each other to see who is going to respond. The question is, which of the following would you do? Would you go over the key points or features again? Ask them a question regarding their understanding? Turn to their lead negotiator and seek comments? Smile gently and say nothing? Fiddle with your papers to buy time? Or would you seek an adjournment? 20 seconds. Okay. Now, you know who you are, but if any of you have put down fiddle with your papers to buy time, it's not what we want you to do. So tap on your hands, please, for those of you who've put that. The others are all possible. There's one for us that's miles ahead of the others, but go over the key points, you might do that. Ask the question regarding their understanding, possibly. Turn to their lead negotiator, possibly. Seek an adjournment are all possible things you could do. By far the most powerful thing for us, and our experience tells us that most of you will have put this down, is smile gently and say nothing. If you have presented your case well, particularly in Asia, you need to leave the time for this to be considered. You need, and it can be a few seconds, it can be 20 seconds like we've been doing today, it could be maybe in a minute. Wouldn't be excessive. If you struggle with that silence and you find silence very awkward, and many of us do, counting to 20 like I've been doing today, or counting from 100 down, can keep your brain occupied while you're waiting for the response to come. If you do anything else, you're likely to be helping the other party more than you're helping your side. Silence is hugely powerful, and we'd strongly recommend that you become comfortable with silence. Negotiations, almost by definition, are going to get awkward at some point in them. Being able to deal with silence would really help your side. What other tactics have we got? We're going to cover in a second 7 tactics that we share on our Essentials courses. But first of all, let's look at when to use tactics. You can use them to buy time as coping mechanisms if negotiations get difficult, to help manage the negotiation, maybe speed it up, slow it down, to encourage more movement from the other party, or just simply to put pressure. These are the tactics that we would typically cover. They're on our first level of our online course. Silence we've discussed. Recess, taking a break, could be very powerful. One more thing, at the end of a negotiation, adding some icing on the cake can be very helpful. Hypothetical question, really useful. That's breaking a deadlock or opening up some more creative thinking. Defense in depth. It's very tactical in terms of hiding behind layers of decision making, having to refer decisions through different management levels. All of that can be helpful. Messenger is a way of creating the relationship or maintaining the relationship. Blaming a third party or a process or a system that you have. And building blocks, very useful at getting further discounts. For example, if you start with negotiating over a smaller volume than you actually require and building up, be aware that it's not always the case that bigger volumes gets bigger discounts, but it can certainly be the case. Make sure you match the tactics to the type of negotiation. Consider the type and the personality of the other party. Don't be predictable, and don't overuse the same tactic. Are tips for you to think about. So, we've been through our 4 pillars. Let's look at some keys to success. Remember to be warm and tough. You should encourage movement wherever possible. You should prepare more. However much preparation you do now, you can do more, and you should do more. Take them through the structure of the negotiation. Focus on the one-way movers, emotion, logic, and threat. And if you do move into bargaining and compromise, make sure you give with blood, sweat, and tears. And very importantly, put yourself in the shoes of the other party. In terms of next steps, over the next 4 months, we've got webinars in March on pricing, costs, and financial analysis, procurement leadership, governance, and functional design in April, strategic formulation, supply, market engagement follows that, and then in June we've got supplier appraisal, evaluation, and audit. Let us know, again at the email address that we provided, if you would like to register for those. We have some exclusive offers to thank you for attending today and registering for this seminar. We are running a number of face-to-face workshops, London, Scotland, Dubai, Harrogate, and New York, and a 50% discount is available if you mention this webinar. Our negotiation hub, let us know if that's of interest, and again, if you mention this seminar, there's a half price discount available for you. In terms of our e-learning hub, there are assessment tools, resources, as well as modules for learning, and a community where you can share knowledge, experience, and post comments. The e-learning can be used for a number of reasons, to embed knowledge or as a refresher. And we also offer webinar-based refresher learning, which can be recorded as this has been. And we commonly use client-end systems. So if you've got a system that you prefer to use, we're happy to use those also. Please connect with us. LinkedIn, ArcBlue, and myself, Andy J.S. Brown. Twitter, @ArcBlueGlobal or @AndyJSBrown. If you'd like to contact me, andy.brown@arcblueglobal.com. If you'd like to contact the administrator for this seminar, seminar.administrator@arcblueglobal.com. So thank you very much for your time today. I hope you have found it interesting. And let us know if you would like some more negotiations to follow. You will receive an email questionnaire over the coming days for you to complete. So we'd be grateful if you complete that questionnaire as part of our continuous improvement. Thank you very much for listening today, and have a lovely rest of day, or good night if that's the time of day for you.